This this tile job was started by somebody else. So I think there were a couple of people involved. The plumber, I believe, had set the new tub. Let's see if I can get better light in here. I think the plumber had set the new tub and also did the rough out of the new shower fixture. And then again, another couple guys came in here and did this tile work. So anyway, the customer was not happy with the tile work and stopped it midway, which is a great idea, but he should have stopped it a lot sooner. This portion of the tile most likely wasn't done in a day, although it could have been. But there are some bigger issues going on here. It's just a really poor job, and there's a lot of reasons for it. This tile is a 12 by 24 porcelain tile. It's very heavy. So one of the mistakes amongst many that this guy made is that he was using these rubber spacers. So these rubber spacers get squished down. They're not going to give you the true 1/16 that they're supposed to be. By the time you get to the second or third row, because this tile is very heavy, you're never really going to get these spacers out. They should have been, these are rubber, they should have been plastic spacers. In addition to the fact that this is not even spaced right. If you look here, this is probably about 1/16, and then it tapers down to about an eighth, maybe a little better than an eighth. So I'm seeing that everywhere I look. Again, about 1/16, and then an eighth or a bit larger. There's huge gaps in the corner, which there's no reason there should be these huge gaps in the corner. And I think sometimes tilers just think, well, I'll just grout all this stuff in and run a bead of caulking and you'll never see it, but there's really no excuse to have these huge gaps. There's, on the other side, there's big gaps as well. And so there's not really a reason for that. Like even here, look, I see this is a cut piece, is a double cut piece. In other words, this was cut piece on the side here, and then it was cut again over here. So normally what you would do is have the cut piece toward the wall, so that again, you want it flush, but you still are going to put some grout in there, and so the cut piece won't be noticeable. But they did a double cut piece. So if you look down here, you can see the cut wasn't even really done straight, and there's little chips on the edge of the tile. So a double cut piece would never ever be used up against, a pristine edge here. That's just wrong in a lot of different ways. Here's what I was getting at with these rubber spacers. This grout line is probably, it's not even a 1/16. In fact, there's not even a really grout line here to speak of, maybe a 32nd, and then it kind of tapers out, and what a mess. And so what happens inevitably is these spacers, again, are hard to get out when all that weight is pushed down on it. So when they put this first row on, this tile set on that, and that tile set on that, and that tile. So, you've got 20 pounds of pressure sitting on that rubber spacer, which is why you have this discrepancy of grout line going on, amongst many other things. Although, there's just a lot of issues going on here. So they never put any type of spacing at the bottom here. They have a larger gap here than they have down here, and a very large gap down at the bottom of the back. In fact, it comes out to about 1/4 of an inch down at the bottom. So they actually started with spacers, 1/4 inch spacers down here, and then it just kind of tapers down to nothing. And so I don't know if the tub is off level or what the deal is, but honestly, this bottom row is a keystone for all the tile on top. So if all they had done is leveled out their tile and put, you got to have a spacer down here. You can't put the tile straight to the tub. That's not going to work. So there should be a spacer down here, but the spacer should run continuous all the way around, and there's not. So, a bit of a quandary. I think some people get caught up in the fact that you got a 1/4 inch here, And you know, if I come over here and not do a 1/4 inch, if it bumps up higher, then there'll be a discrepancy or whatever. And I don't know that they really knew what they were doing. The edge of these tiles are chipped off. Almost everywhere there's a cut, the edge of the tile are chipped off. So in other words, the porcelain that's on this porcelain tile has been chipped off. And so I think the customer had told me they used a table wet saw. In other words, one of those small table wet saws you can get for $100 or $150, which is the wrong thing to use on this huge tile. But also, when your blade is dull, you get this little chip thing going on. And you know, these chips are going to happen if you don't have a fresh blade on a larger tile saw, in addition to the fact that they used a cut where the pristine tile is at again. Like, why would they do that? I don't even know why they would do that. It was not even necessary. They went to a lot of pain to get this cut, to get this cut around this mud cap. Look at that. I mean, I can just hear them just cussing at themselves, trying to figure out how to get this circle cut made. So they couldn't do it with one full piece. You see, this is theoretically a half a piece. So many issues going on here. I'm throwing myself off by talking. This should have been a half piece. So the half piece, you know, if we're looking at a 24, right? So this should be a 12. Instead, they cut about an 8. And so it could still be 12 and come out of the bathtub area. There's nothing wrong with that. So that should have been a 12, that 24, and then another 24, but they couldn't figure out how to do that. So that's why they used 2 different pieces to cut their circular around here. So that's kind of funky. And then this is really poor quality cut. Although all the cuts are that way. Everywhere you look at a cut, the porcelain is chipped off. There's just so many wrong things going on here. Wow, look at that. So they put a hole in here and realized, whoops, our shower head is up there. I don't know if they were just guessing and then decided to do a measurement to find out for sure. I don't know what's going on there. So many things going on. So another thing going on, they're going to use ultimately a white grout on here, and so they use gray thin set. Gray thin set with white grout is never a good idea because you get bleed through. Should you get water penetration going through the grout line, which inevitably you're going to at some point, unless you use, you know, better grout. This is going to be a non-sanded grout, so this gray thin set eventually would have bled through to that white grout, and then you would have had a discoloration on your grout and kind of scratching your head as to wondering why you have that going on. Look at that huge gap. Wow, I could stick my finger in there. That's just crazy. Just a lot of bad things going on. So some of the minor things, there's so many major things going on here that I'm missing the minor things. There's a lot of lippage here. So in regard to the overall scheme of what's going on, because there's so many bad things going on here, I don't want to miss things, and I'm missing things. So there's a lippage going on here. Very profound lippage. I can't even show you. Let me see if I can show you. It's very profound lippage going on with a lot of these tile. That one in particular, that just kind of, you know, there's lippage everywhere. Another lippage going on here. And so the reason they got into this lippage issue, amongst the many other things that they did wrong, is they troweled out their thin set on the wall, and then they didn't back butter their tile. So look at that thin set. I mean, literally, it's maybe an 1/8 of an inch, maybe, of thin set. And so you would assume that, oh, okay, well, let me just put it as thin as possible on the wall and just stick the tile to the wall, but that's wrong. You can't do that. You have to be able to manipulate your tile in such a way you don't end up with lippage, and the only way to do that is to trowel out your thin set. I don't even think they use the right trowel. Is to trowel out your thin set and then back butter your tile and then put them both together. So you have a little thicker thin set buildup going on, but that allows you to manipulate, so when your walls aren't right, that you can actually have one maybe closer to the wall and one a little bit further out, and so that everything is smooth and the way it's supposed to be, rather than having all that lippage. And so you can tell that just looking at the transition strip. It's literally flush to the wall. In fact, it's embedded into the wall in a couple areas here. So that was a big mistake, and that caused them a lot of angst, I'm sure. The lippage should never really happen. This is rectified tile, meaning that every tile here should match up to the other tile. So another big mistake that, sorry, I tend to talk a lot, and when there's bad jobs like this going on, I talk even more, because I'm trying to show people what not to get into. This job should have never lasted this long. This job should have been stopped. Here's an interesting thing. They managed to cut a hole exactly where they were supposed to cut, and most non-tilers wouldn't even bother buying, the cutter for this hole. They would just go ahead and, make a cut like this, and then cut a little circular thing, and then put the strip back in there. So at least they did that right, but they didn't do that right, and a lot of other things they didn't do right. So anyway, getting back to this niche. First of all, the niche is way too small. I usually put them between two studs, and the middle one gets cut out, so that's not a huge issue. They managed to line up their line though, look at that. But then they messed up on the niche itself. The very first thing is it's not sloped. In fact, if anything, I see the slope is down that way, so it's not even level, nor is it sloped downwards, so that the water, if it gets into there, will just run off and over. So there's no slope on that whatsoever, so that's not a good thing. I don't even have to talk about that. That's just a horrific job. This Schluter strip, they tried to put on the inside portion of the face tile, whereas it should have been on the outside portion. These Schluter strips come with little corner pieces. If they could have put the corner piece would meet up, the straight piece would meet up to the corner, and then this one would snap into that. You would have little corner pieces here and here. All four corners would match up nicely. Although I still wouldn't advise that. I'd still like doing the bull nose when I frame these out. But so they kind of put this in back at, no, they didn't kind of. They put this strip in back assward. In addition to that, look at the discrepancy. You have an 1/8 of an inch tile above where the strip is at. Huge line, look at that. Again, it's just it's a fantastically huge line, both inside, trying to get a good shot, and on top and bottom and everywhere I look at that huge line in the back too. Again, chipping off of the tile. These strips aren't even close to meeting. At least they kind of sort of meet here, but it's done so wrong it's irrelevant. So they meet here, but that's not the way they're supposed to be put in. And then they don't meet up here at all, and then chipping of the tile, of course, is again due to the blade. So there's just a lot of stuff going on here. Oh, by the way, this is when I said they should have stopped a long time ago. On the instructions of every shower valve, it tells you about the mud cap, and it tells you where the outside of the tile should be. In other words, your finished wall should be within the parameter of whatever mud cap you're dealing with. Usually it's this flange right here, or not flange, but the mud cap itself, that gives you the outside and inside dimension, right? So your finished wall should be minimum right here and maximum out here. So they give you about a 3/4 to almost an inch playroom of your finished wall. Well, this valve is so far out of the minimum that the valve actually has to be removed, not removed, but it has to be, kind of manipulated backward at least an inch in order to have a finished wall where it's at. So, that's not a good thing either. I don't know why people that can't do this stuff continue to try to do it, but it is what it is. So just a lot of wrong going on here. So I'm taking all this stuff down, and it's a waste of money and material and time. all this stuff is going away. Oh, there's so much stuff I just forget. There's no waterproofing. So they didn't even bother spending $50 for Red Guard to waterproof the walls, regardless of the fact that they used Hardy Backer. So anyway, sometimes I get mesmerized by the amount of mistakes that are made on a job. This is another issue. When I put backer board on a floor, I use roofing nails, which backer board companies allow for. The backer board companies, specifically Hardy Backer, have these little circular areas to show you where to put a screw. And then here's another one about 8 inches away, and so here's another one. So they kind of followed the directions on here, but then they kind of didn't. In other words, they put the screws where the little circular notches are, but they didn't put enough. And so again, I use roofing nails so that when I put my backer board down, any squeaking on a floor, 90 to 98% of the squeaking goes away once my backer board, because I'm bam, 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 bam. I might use 50, 60 nails on each piece of board because nails are cheap and they're going to adhere to, you know, your subfloor a lot better. So that squeaking would have gone away had I did it with that, and they didn't do it. They used the same screws that Hardy sells you, but they didn't use enough of them. But I don't think I can even take this up. They glued it down, so they glued and screwed it. They have then said that they glued the floor to, and it's going to be a real pain to take up, even if I take off these screws. You know, I'm going to end up taking off the surface of the plywood. So I don't want to make a bigger problem. So chances are what I'll do, this is 1/4 inch, so I'll put another 1/4 inch layer on top of that and I'll nail it down. And then by the time the tile goes on, all that will go away. In fact, when I nail down the second layer, all that squeaking should go away. And then the tile after that. So, man, okay, so I've got lost in my own thoughts. On jobs like this, and the main reason I do videos like this, especially critiquing other people's work, is so that when somebody starts a job and they start doing things like this, just stop them, you know, just stop them right away. Just stop work, because this is, you know, $400, $500, $600, $800 worth of material that I'm going to have to take off of here and redo, and there's no point in just throwing money, literally throwing money away, and, you know, trying to save you a buck or two by doing these videos. Hopefully people will adhere to a lot of these mistakes, and when they first start seeing these mistakes, get rid of the person. This would be the point. Even down here, I would you know, say, hey, get a second opinion on what's going on. But the valve thing is very important. You cannot set tile, you cannot have this a finished product. Had they finished, they would have never got discussion and all that stuff on there. There would have been a huge gap, it would have been laughable. So just stop the job when it gets to a point where you're not comfortable, or, you know, when you see these things going on, just stop the job, because it doesn't make any sense. So I did the tear out here. Took a little while. This is not really Hardy Backer as I thought it was. It's a composite board. I think it's a USG product. I've seen it before. But anyway, getting back to the issue. Oftentimes when I start a video, I thought I ended it and then I'll start it up again when I see issues. I never really anticipate issues around the tub, as all the ones I pointed out I've already enumerated. But now there's more. This is interesting. This niche, you remember how awful it was put together, and I didn't realize how much more awful it was. So what they did is they toe-nailed some sheetrock screws. What I've taken out, these sheetrock screws so far, are, I think they're inch and 3/4 or 2-inch sheetrock screws. So they're not even, I mean, there's 2 screws in there holding this bottom thing up, which is not a real big deal per se. Once everything gets wrapped around it, you know, it should hold. But up here they had a brain fart. So nothing there. I mean, literally, I haven't done anything to this piece of wood. The way, after I tore everything out of here, that's exactly what it was. There's no screws, there's no nails, nothing holding this top board in place, which is a little odd. I've never seen that before. I mean, it was a crap job anyway, but wow, really? No nails, screws, nothing. Okay, so anyway, I get mesmerized by some of these mistakes. Not even a mistake, just inattention to detail. So this is interesting too. These tile here that were meant to go on this wall and eventually will go back are pretty much pristine. Believe it or not, I got probably 90% of this tile off with no problem at all. If you can see, this was on the top and there is no thin set on it whatsoever. All this tile has no thin set on it. Another top piece, no thin set. And all of these full pieces I managed to get off without even cracking, without even chipping them. Because, well, maybe a little chip on the side, but that's not a big deal. Because there's no thin set. There is no thin set. And no thin set. No thin set. Well, I can't get that one back. Look here. No thin set. No thin set. No thin set. So, I bet you're wondering how they stuck these tile on the wall with no thin set. So I'm going to give you a little heads up on this. I'm going to call it mastic. This is that gallon of pre-mixed thin set that I have never bought before and I would never use. And for all intents and purposes, this is mastic. It acts the same way as mastic. It's rubbery like mastic. In fact, I'm going to go look at it. I know I saw a thin set on the label. I must have. But this acts the same way as mastic, and you never ever ever put mastic on a wall in a shower. So the mastic pretty much stayed to the surface of this backer board, but it never stayed to the tile, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Well, first of all, never use mastic in a shower. But I think the main reason is they never back buttered the tile. So they just troweled all this out with a very thin notch trowel to begin with, which was a mistake of it in itself, but then they used this mastic-like material, and then in addition they never even buttered the tile. So that was all wrong in a lot of different ways, as I already showed you before, but the good part about being wrong is that I was able to save probably $50 or $75 worth of tile here. So that's a good thing. Yay! But that's it. So I didn't really find any other surprises in here. I don't want any more, honestly. But that's it. So I'm going to get started on putting all this back together.